opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along today as well. Today is Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. And as always, we want to deliver to you today what I call a robust conversation. A couple of great guests, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the interviews as much as I enjoy doing them. Before we begin, we want to thank KFAI for hosting this program, being a partner with me and Insight News and McFarlane Media over the years. And I can't tell you how much I respect and love the fact that my program follows Amy Goodman in Democracy Now! She does such magnificent work. The work she does is important. It's groundbreaking. It keeps the entire world informed. And we hope that we are simply riding the coattail of what she is attempting to do in educating, illuminating, uplifting democratic principles around the country and around the world. So kudos to Amy Goodman, kudos to KFAI, and kudos to you who support this station. We invite you to support this program in particular as well. How can you do that? Become a subscriber to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We're streaming this program. Not only is it a live broadcast on Tuesdays, but every day we stream it across about 7 different social media platforms. We're streaming live to Black Press USA, their YouTube channel, streaming live to the Insight News YouTube channel, which is YouTube/Insight News MN. But we're on 3 Facebook platforms, a Twitter platform, and we are on a LinkedIn platform. So no matter how you are connecting with us, we're asking you to help us grow our membership base, our subscriber base by even during the show or after the show, going to YouTube Insight News MN and click on the subscribe button. You could also like and share. We want to grow to 1,000 subscribers. We're at about halfway there, and each subscriber counts. So let me count you as one of our subscribers as well. We also want to begin, as we often do, reminding people that we want to join the Minnesota Department of Health, encouraging our communities to be COVID aware. We're partnering with them to remind our community that risks still exist. So we have to continue to follow the COVID-19 protocols, like washing your hands, like staying aware and prioritizing prevention. The idea is that together we can create awareness, we can encourage testing and help everyone stay healthy. So with that, let me invite you to enjoy the show. And remember, get well and stay healthy. Well, we often lead to with a hot topic every program. And today we have one that's important. I'm pleased to share with us a Minnesota connection here as well. The hot topic is one that's at insightnews.com, a story by Stacy Brown at the National Newspaper Publishers Association. And it's a story that talks about the President, Joe Biden, his tribute to Emmett Till, and also the fact that in doing this tribute to Till, he's acknowledging the vital role of the Black press in the civil rights movement. And the piece that Stacy Brown wrote, I'll just share a little of it. A nice picture of the president and his decision to establish a national monument, which is being hailed as a crucial activity in acknowledging and preserving the painful history of racial violence in the U.S. Stacy writes, recognizing the country's painful racial history and honoring the legacy of Emmett Till, President Joe Biden signed a proclamation designating a national monument spanning 2 states to memorialize Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till Bradley. A distinguished audience included Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr., President and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, NNPA, as well as several members of the Congressional Black Caucus, including Chair Stephen Horsford, Minority Whip James Clyburn, and Mississippi Democratic Leader Benny Thompson. So, in summary, it reminds us that Tills, a 14-year-old Black teenager from Chicago who was murdered in a town called Money, Mississippi on August 28th, 1955. He was murdered after being accused by a white woman of whistling at her. His brutal killing became a catalyst for the civil rights movement, particularly when his mother, Mamie Till, chose to hold an open casket funeral, and a photograph of her son's disfigured body was published in Black media, bringing national attention to the horrors of racism and sparking outrage across the nation. I can tell you that I remember my parents owned a grocery store in Kansas City, and one of the things we sold every week was Jet magazine, and Jet magazine was like the documented record for life in Black America. Every week we look forward to getting the new copies and selling them. We sold them out every week. People wanted to know about our people as told by our people. And I remember the week that the Emmett Till story came out, and it was just a close-up face shot of a disfigured face of this 14-year-old. It was horrific, but it made an indelible impression on me and on every other, I believe, African-American, Black American who understood who we were dealing with, what we were dealing with, and the cost of trying to maintain our dignity and opportunity in a hostile environment. Well, I'll stop editorializing there because it's a lot, but it's important that the president is creating this monument. You should read the story at insightnews.com. Let me begin then with my first guest today. I've got the pleasure of meeting a new, I'll presume, she'll correct me, I'll say a new friend, because I just spoke to her briefly a minute ago. But Karen Zacarías is making waves in the theater world with her play, Shane, which is now being performed at the Guthrie Theater. Karen, good afternoon, and welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. How you doing?
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited that you're here and excited for the work that you're mounting at the Guthrie right now. Talk about the play Shane. What I loved about it when I first saw it was the storyline, first of all, because you've been intentional in reframing what it means to be part of American history, in particular the Old West. There was a stereotypical image that was devoid of Black people and people of color.
Right.
You set that record straight in a way that's exciting and creative in this play. And secondly, I was excited that some of the images are just powerful and beautiful. I don't know if we can show it, but the picture that we used on the front page of Insight last week, that is awesome. Amazing.
Yeah.
So talk about the play and what it means. And in the course of this interview, keep inviting people to show up and check it out, okay?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm calling in from Washington, D.C., but I just spent some glorious weeks in Minneapolis, and thank you. I love the city. I've had a number of plays done in Minneapolis at 10,000 Things and at the Guthrie, and I just had a play called the Book Club Play. So Minnesota has always been very kind to me. So thank you. Yes, Shane. So Shane was one of the first books I read as a Mexican immigrant when my family moved from Mexico to Boston. And I read it. I thought there was so much about the book. I hadn't seen the movie yet. There was so much about the book that spoke to me. It was a family moving up north for a better future. And the woman's name was Marian, but I read it as Marianne, which is a very common Latin American name. Mm-hmm. And the way the book described Shane, I was like, oh, he's Roberto Clemente, who was my hero. And Roberto Clemente was the Pirates, was a Pirates baseball player, number 21, who died, unfortunately, as a hero, bringing supplies to earthquake victims in Nicaragua. So I wrote my book report. I did my poster of it, and my teacher was like, that's wrong, right? It wouldn't be a Mexican family, and Shane wouldn't be Black. And I was like, oh, okay. And I felt, I don't know, humiliated or weird about it. And then I never saw the movie, because when I saw the poster for the movie and it looked so different than how I imagined it as a child, I just kind of let it be.
Put this in context. What year was this when you first became acquainted and did this creative approach to the story?
It was 1980. It was 1980 when I moved to the United States. So
and the reason I'm asking is because that seed has been planted, and now here it is.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
You never know. You never know what things from your youth will suddenly kind of dawn up. So fast forward a couple decades, and Blake Robeson, who's the director and a very good friend of mine, he was like, he's always been encouraging me to like do a Western, but he was thinking it more in the fun way, in the Blazing Saddles way, and that type of way. And I was like, Blake, I can't, the Wild West, as is portrayed, actually has a lot of problems. I mean, I'd be interested in doing the True West. And you know what? This book, Shane, which is about a family, it's a domestic drama. It's not just a shootout at the OK Corral. It's actually about family, and it's about a story about how to be a better person and can we outrun our past? I think has some interesting themes, but let's populate it with the actual people that lived in the West. Let's have indigenous voices. Let's have Mexican voices. Let's have, African-American voices in it, because that's historically 25% of cowboys were Black and the other 25 were Mexican. And do you see that in the John Wayne movies? No, sir, you do not. And so that was the impetus behind doing that. But, there's a reason why Westerns aren't on stage. You don't have horses.
Okay.
You don't have panoramas. Like, how do you do that moody kind of thing? And so when you're talking about the beautiful photography and the pictures and the lights, we decided to be as theatrical as possible, using percussion, using lights, using tension and movement to kind of tell the story of the West. And it's proved to be, people are really, really responding to it on a visceral, edge on your seat kind of moment. And people are weeping too, because it has so many themes. It's still the Shane story. It's still the story of looking for father figures, right?
Well, tell the original movie story in the book, because
So in the original story, it's your American myth. A stranger comes to town, and there's a cattle rancher that wants to take all the homesteaders' lands away from him so he can make more money, and he's trying to push them off their land. And this mysterious gunslinger really wants to leave his past behind. He wants to put his gun down, and this family takes him in, and he starts helping them, and he really hasn't been loved by a family, and it opens him up. And then he realizes that the only way that he can love this family back in so many ways is by taking on this land baron, and in an epic battle at the end. So it's a classic story of a stranger coming to town. And there's a little boy that looks up to him, and a little boy who's looking at all the men in this story and trying to decide what kind of man he wants to grow up to be. And as the mother of a son, that was a really interesting touching point. We talk about toxic masculinity, but I think the story of Shane has a lot of positive masculinity side by side, to seeing how these men are managing these situations. And there's a very strong female protagonist in it too.
And so that feeling of all the dynamics stayed with you from then till now.
Yes.
And go ahead and talk about the mechanics of creating the space in theater and on stage. And where do you go from here with that?
Well, we first of all, it's the first thing is taking a book and making it into a play. So that means taking it and making it three-dimensional. Now, in the book and in the movie, there is really very little talk about the Native American population. And, you know, homesteaders who are portrayed as the heroes, the government, that land isn't just free, and they're getting it for free, but there's a story underneath that. So I thought it was really important to create a Native American character who felt intrinsic to the plot and weave her through, so at the end she has a big part in the end, how the culmination ends. But
let me take an aside here. This is a personal privilege. Do you hear the term colonizer in today's conversation?
Yes.
How does that play? I mean, when I hear it, it's I like the term because it's one more way of describing what happened. And I was invited to understand the story, the feeling of the pioneer from the pioneer's point of view. And so when I looked at the world, the lens was brave, you know, gallant, riding into the sunset, always west, and bringing whatever it is that is good to a space that was desolate, unorganized, unformed, but never an admission of the destruction, the toxic or the pox of expansion. Pax Europa, you know. And so when I hear the term colonizer in reference to these relationships, it tells me that we have to keep on looking at different ways to look at the same thing, and that the more we do, the better we become. That's what I think. But that's my aside. What do you think?
I agree completely with that. And in the play, we hold everybody accountable, because even though it's a Mexican family that's been displaced, that were further down south, and they've been displaced, you know, they've moved up north to try to find, because they lost their land with the Mexican-American War. That doesn't mean that they're not taking something from somebody else. So, you know, it's complicated. The story gets complicated because the Mexican family is also indigenous, but not willing to admit it. And having Shane come into their life, and in the play, Shane is a formerly enslaved person who had to fight in the Civil War, because that's what happened. That's why the people who left the South to come west, that's a big part of the story. And the reason they became ranchers and worked as cowboys is because that was work that it was open to them. And so all of those stories are in this 90-minute play that still honors that initial story about a boy looking up to a cowboy that comes to town. It's just this time this cowboy has a backstory that's hard, and this is a cowboy that is trying to outrun his past. And what he realizes, as we should realize as a nation, is the only way we can get through our past is to acknowledge the truth of it and try and be honest about it, so that we cannot keep burying it. And so a lot of the play is about that.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm talking with Karen Zacarías, who is the playwright presenting the play Shane at the Guthrie Theater. Karen, let me have you invite our audiences to attend and to enjoy this creative piece at the Guthrie.
Thank you. Well, we've been getting rave reviews and standing ovations. If you want to see a tight 90-minute surprising and moving story that is about all Americans, come and celebrate Shane with us at the Guthrie Theater. We're up until August 27th, and it's a new American play for the American canon. And there's something for everybody. People who love Westerns, people who hate Westerns, people who've never seen themselves in Westerns. There is something for everybody in this piece that we hope.
Well, so Karen, let's talk about the arc of your production so far. You, I read, are one of the most produced Mexican-American playwrights, women in particular. Talk about that.
I'm also one of the most just produced playwrights, period. Yeah. So there's that. So without
set it straight. Yeah. Talk about that. Describe the arc of your work, first of all, from early to now, and I want to know where you're going. And then we'll finish the interview with me talking about, I always ask my guests to tell the story of their lineage and genealogy. Whose shoulders do you stand on?
Yes.
What spirits, what histories, what ancestries reside in and around you and direct you to this moment and the moments that flow from right now?
Oh, that's beautiful. The first question. Oh, I'm sorry.
The arc of your work, the story.
The arc of the work, yes.
Yeah.
The arc of my work as an immigrant who moved to this country, trying to explain what it was to be Mexican and what it was to be an other, having come from a place where I wasn't an other, right? Like everybody around me was Mexican, to coming to a place where I had to kind of explain that, made me always search to try to write stories that created a bridge. I also think art is about healing, and I think art is about community and communion. So I've written plays for children, I've written comedies, I've written dramas. That all of them are about trying to talk about the human condition and celebrate differences and commonalities at the same time. So I started an organization called Young Playwrights Theater, where we teach playwriting in schools here in DC. And I started an organization called the Latinx Theater Commons, which is for people in the theater world that want to come together and celebrate new stories for a new America.
Okay. And then talk about your personal story. Here's the way I say it. Who's your mama? Who's your daddy? You know,
yeah, for
who's your
sure.
grandma, your grandpa?
Yeah.
But talk about the lineage. For me, it's important to know that each of us is a cog in a continuum, right?
Absolutely.
And that means this moment is special, but it's a part of something bigger. And
Yes.
we're enjoying it and occupying it right now.
Oh my goodness. We need to sit down and have a nice cup of coffee because I so believe in everything you're saying. I'm Karen Zacarías. I'm the daughter of Fernando Zacarías, who is born in Mexico. He is a public health doctor, and a Danish woman named Annette Nurland, who was a nurse. My father was interested in socialized medicine as a Mexican, and he went to Denmark and learned Danish and socialized with the nurse that became my mom. And she moved to Mexico without having ever seen a bean or tortilla. She did a great adventure. Now, my father's father was born in Lebanon. And he was born from a 14-year-old Lebanese woman who used to live in Uruguay, but was sent to Lebanon to find a husband, found a husband. And when the Ottomans were moving in, they moved to Mexico because the Americas were all of that. Mm-hmm. And my Mexican grandmother is half indigenous. She's from the Tarahumara Indians in Mexico, and half Spanish. So that was Erlinda Bustos was my grandmother. And on the other side, the Danish family, we thought they'd just been Vikings forever, but we did a 23andMe, and I guess they've been more exploring around the world, as we know, also as colonizers. So there's some interesting deviations in there, some Irish and all of that. But yeah, I'm your typical Mexican, Lebanese, Danish girl.
Wonderful. So where does the work go from here? What is driving and pulling you into the future? What hope or what fear?
Well, first of all, we hope Shane has a really robust life. There's a lot of theaters interested. There's some places in New York City that are interested because they've seen the great notices at the Guthrie, and the Guthrie and Cincinnati Playhouse are such respected theaters that people are like, whoa, if this getting this kind of attention here, we need to start looking at that. And other places that I'm writing I have a play that is called Destiny of Desire, which is about Mexican telenovelas. Mm-hmm. And that is scheduled to go to Broadway, my first Broadway play. So I might be the first Mexican woman on Broadway. We'll see. I'll believe it when I see it. But that's in March. And I'm writing a couple of new plays that that bring voices that haven't been on stage. A band in Paraguay that live by a dump, and they make music using garbage. And I went down to meet them in Paraguay, and I'm writing a story about them. So.
Pues mucho gusto en conocerle.
Gracias, señora.
Con usted, sí, y quiero que sabe, yo soy medio cubano, por eso he estudiado y aprendido español en la escuela superior, pero digo que ya estoy aprendiéndolo y me gusta usar este idioma bela, no sé cuál.
No, señora Al, su acento es fabuloso, y Shane también es mitad cubano.
Bueno.
En la obra, our Shane es half Cuban.
Como yo.
Sí, como usted, y también habla español como usted. So, so I hope we can come celebrate all the ancestors that we all share, and those that we hope to hold hands with together one day.
Super. Karen Zacarías, thank you so very, very much.
Muchas gracias, señor Al.
Until the next time. Adios.
Adios.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Boy, what a wonderful interview. What a wonderful spirit, and a priceless moment in getting a look at the world that she is both observing and creating at the same time. So awesome. Well, let me continue, and I want to bring in a friend of mine, a colleague, a person I've known for a long time and worked with for a long time and continue to work with. And we've got two topics. One was our scheduled topic, talking about the ERC, the Employee Retention Credit that the federal government has made available to businesses. And the reason I have invited Silas Huston here to talk about that is that he's got a company that's providing that service to small businesses, or businesses, not small businesses in general. But we have an interest, he has, and I have an interest in making sure that businesses in our community, African-American, Black-owned businesses, know about the resource and avail ourselves of the resource. Of course, he's interested in assisting any business, any small business in particular, because too often, because we are so small and so focused and do the grinding every day, when opportunities come through that we don't hear about, or we hear about too late, or don't have the resources, the time, or the knowledge to take advantage of these assets and resources, he's here to help provide a solution. But the second thing, and it wasn't on the agenda, but it makes sense, I wanted to talk to Silas about his interest and my interest in discussing what today's change in the law about recreational marijuana means for Black community, for our community. So we're going to talk about that as well today. First of all, Brother Silas, good afternoon and welcome to the conversation. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you as always.
Yeah, always. So let's talk about your company. First of all, your company is HBCI. Tell the company who you are and what you do.
HBCI, pretty basic, stands for Houston Business Consulting, Inc. HBCI, we consider ourselves to be change agents, first and foremost. We help businesses grow and expand, work with businesses. They might want to buy a building, sell the building, expand their business. They might have to meet a new customer requirement. They may have an audit, things of that nature. So that's the primary areas that we serve. We help our clients solve problems is what we really do.
And how new or old is that company? How long have you been in that field?
Well, I myself have been in the field for, 30 years. HBCI in its current form has been around for 3 years. And so our office is in Minnetonka. And like I say, we provide a variety of different services, with the ERC being one of them that we are focusing on right now.
Let me disclose that I've had a business relationship with you for years. You've been a valuable bookkeeping and business services company to McFarlane Media over the years. So publicly thanking you for the work you've done to help us get on track. And what we're talking about now, as a matter of fact, and trying to scale up, we're having conversations about how we both talk about and experience growing businesses that are ready to move to the next level. And that's kind of the focus of HBCI at present, as I understand it.
It is. You know, we really feel as though there are a number of businesses in our community that have gone through that maturity cycle and have really grown to the level of being major, large size, what have you. And they need to reorganize to be able to meet that next level of goal. And so typically when they do that, they end up having to turn to a consulting firm outside of our community, because that high level consulting, you can find a Black bookkeeper, you can find a Black accountant, but somebody to help you take that next generation escalation, to do that current assessment of your business, to look at your internal controls, your policies and procedures, to help you look at that succession planning, things, all of those types of things are the things that we specialize in. And our focus is, we say the melanated community, is because we want to include all of those all of us of color.
I'm Al McFarlane. You're listening to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is my friend, Silas Huston. He's founder and principal at HBCI. And we're talking about small businesses in particular, but the question of scalability, of moving businesses to the next level. Well, one of the things that we wanted to talk about specifically was the ERC. Now, Silas, I got a letter about 3 or 4 days ago from Bell Bank. Bell Bank is the bank that I went to 3-4 years ago when I learned about at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when all businesses were challenged, right? Bell Bank was one of the number of banking institutions that brought the the loans for small businesses called at the
PPP.
PPP, right? And so they were able to get me into a PPP loan that after a year or two was forgiven, which is great. And then they also did the prep work for me to get the next loan, which was called the what's the name for it? For the I'm having a blank on the acronym for the.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking. Oh, man, I'm having a blank on it as well.
Yeah, the next loan. But anyway,
the next loan. Yes.
And so then they've got my records. They have my information. So they sent me a notice saying you may be eligible for X, thousands and thousands of dollars based on your history of retaining workers during the COVID pandemic. And so I'm sending that over to you because you and I have talked about your company providing that service to me. But what I'm saying right now is that too often people like me in small business don't have the energy or the time or the focus to take advantage of opportunity. So I'm going to have you kind of walk me through what you're going to do for me. I'll be your case study, right?
Okay.
And here it is, a private conversation between Silas Huston and Al McFarlane with 100,000 people listening on KFAI and many more across the board on social media, because we think this is an important conversation. So everybody should lean in. If you're in business or if you know somebody in business, we want to make sure that all of our businesses that too often are left out because of lack of information or access get a chance to get a leg up and to get a foot in the door to make sure we're not leaving money on the table. Silas, how do you help Al McFarlane make sure that he is eligible and gets the ERC money that his company earns based on the current? What is ERC? Let's start there.
Let's start there. ERC stands for Employee Retention Credit. It is a federal credit that was part of the CARES Act in response to the pandemic. And so when the federal government did other support packages like PPP, they put money into the marketing of it so that nonprofits and different groups would have resources to reach out, tell people about it, process it for them, and help them along through to make sure that everybody who qualifies can know about it and get it in a safe and secure environment, somebody you can trust. When they did the ERC, they did the exact opposite. They did not put any marketing dollars out there. They put it out there. They purposely didn't market. They didn't tell anybody. The only way there's nobody that the government pays to do this. And so it left it to the consultant marketplace. And when that happens, we as melanated people generally get left out. One, we hear about it late. When we do hear about it, we hear about it in some mass marketing way, which makes you think, fraud, being gouged in fees and prices. And so HBCI came into this marketplace because of those things. We wanted to be able to give our community a trusted source, somebody that would be able to help you through this process. We don't try to do the whole country. We do Minnesota, we do Georgia, we do Michigan, places that we know. We know that the governor in those states took actions that limit how you do business. We know everybody was affected by the pandemic. So the question becomes, what are the actions that happen in the state that you live in by your governor that can qualify your business for the ERC? So if you lived in a state where the governors did little or nothing, then it'd be tough for you to qualify. You probably only qualify on an income level only. When you live in states where a lot of actions were taken, then you can qualify not only income, but you can qualify for having a full or partial shutdown, and also for having a supply chain disruption. So all of those things take different forms in different areas. When you think about a supply chain disruption, it depends on what you're supplying in order for that supply to be disrupted. If you are a supplier of people, say you do a employment service or whatever, and then those people stop coming because of the pandemic and they're not available, then that supply of people was disrupted. Now you have a supply chain disruption. The same way if somebody was trying to get parts for a car and couldn't get them, then of course they had a supply chain disruption. Full or partial shutdown could mean that you shut down for a day, could mean that you shut down part of your business that you were doing and stopped doing. Let's say you had a restaurant and you had drive-through and dine-in, and because of the pandemic, you had to stop the dine-in, but you kept the drive-through going and the takeout going. Then that's still a partial shutdown because that was a significant portion of your business, and you stopped doing that. Even if your revenue on the other areas went up high enough to compensate for that partial shutdown, it doesn't take away that partial shutdown took place. I could go on and on, but I say all this to say that HBCI, we have a very straightforward questionnaire for our clients to fill out. It's formulated for the state of Minnesota, for the state of Georgia, for the state of Michigan. Fill that form out. Takes you 30 minutes to fill this form out. This is a payroll tax, so that you need to have your 941s and your payroll information. If you have that information, our clients, it's taking less than an hour for them to give us the information we need to qualify them, provided they have those payroll records that we are speaking of. If you use a payroll company, ADP, Paycheck, somebody like that, you can always get the reports from them. And this credit is for 2021, and it's only for 2021. Everybody gets to get it one time, but everybody who had W-2 employees during that period of time has earned this money and should claim it. We look at it and thinks about a rare situation where you have a rising tide lifts all ships scenario, right? Everybody who had a W-2 employee likely qualifies, has this money coming, and should go and claim it. HBCI, we charge 6%. Other people out there charge 20, 15, 25. And our thing is to get people what they need. We give a full justification at the end that will give you everything you need if the IRS comes knocking on your door to justify the credit that we help you get.
Let me disclose that we're on a public service channel. We don't talk business and prices here, but here we're talking about. No, you're okay. I think you're explaining, however, how the model works. I think you're not selling as such, but you are explaining. And our objective here is to have people learn about whether or not they should be thinking about, finding out if they're eligible. Because if they don't, they're leaving money on the table. And the reason we're having the conversation, Brother Silas, is that too often our people, marginalized people, think that everything is for them and nothing is for us. So we don't even try sometimes because we got so much, pressure every day, just trying to keep our doors open. So it's difficult. So that's why I think this conversation is important. And again, our aim here is to prick the ears of anybody that's in business, and particularly people of color in business who might or might not know that they probably, if they met these conditions during the COVID 2021 in particular, and had W-2 employees, they have money that is theirs that they should get. We want them to get their money. Is that correct?
Yes. Let me add a couple more things, right?
Yeah.
Nonprofits qualify for the credit,
see?
so long as they have W-2 employees. Churches qualify for the credit, so long as they have W-2 employees. Charter schools qualify for the credit, so long as they have W-2 employees. And the credit we're talking about is up to $21,000 per employee. And
why is it up to 21? Is there different levels per employee, or how does that work?
So the way it works is that the credit is 70% of the first $10,000 that an employee makes each quarter. So it's 3 quarters, the first, second, and third quarter. So you can get up to $7,000 per quarter, or $21,000. So if somebody made $5,000, then you get 70% of the $5,000.
Let's make this simple. So I have an employee in 2021 who maybe I'm paying $30,000 for the year. Let's say I pay him $40,000 a year.
Yes.
So theoretically, that's $10,000 per quarter.
Yes.
How does this work for me? I've got a $40,000 payroll employee, right? So what happens?
So what happens is that you would then take the first 3 quarters and you would get 70% of that $10,000, or $7,000 per quarter, or $21,000 for that employee. That one employee.
You're telling me I'm going to get a check or money, or is it a credit against future taxes?
No, you're going to get
it's called an ERC. ERC.
You're going to get 3 checks in the mail. In this case, you get 3 $7,000 checks in the mail. So we
and if I have 5 employees at that level,
that's 100,000. I have to give this story. I had a gentleman who was referred to us. Now we have a referral fee that we give to encourage people to send people to let them know about.
We're not talking business. That's
We're not talking about that. But I'm just saying it came through a referral. So someone referred this person to me, knew that they had employees, knew that they what industry they was in, so they likely qualified. They talked to us and then stopped. And then 3 months later, he called me again, and I'm like, okay, guy, look, 30 minutes to find out whether you qualify or not. You got 30 minutes. And he's okay, fine. He sends me the information, he qualifies. When we've done qualifying him, Al, $3 million is what he had coming back. $3 million, right? So people would be shocked when you have people that are, say, in the PCA business, things of that nature, when they have a high number of employees, a lot of times their margins are low. So their payroll is the biggest portion, their biggest expense by far. And so this benefits them because they get the benefit of paying that high payroll because they can get that $21,000 per person. Yeah. So you got people out there with 10, 15, 20, 30 employees that are really that are missing out on hundreds of thousands of dollars that they have earned. And the clock is ticking to this running out to its end.
Well, it runs now through the end of 2024, as I understand it. So people need to get busy right now. Yes. This funding disappears at the end of 2024. Is that correct?
Effectively it does. You're going to go into the first 2 quarters of 2025, but the rules change completely. There's no guarantee that you will receive the funds at that point. They become discretionary.
Or the money may be gone.
That's what I'm saying. The money, now, there's no cap on the money being gone.
Well, let me tell you, I was qualified for the, I'm trying to think of the name of the loan that I got, EIDL.
There you go.
EIDL. So I got a first loan from EIDL, and I'm a classic small business, entrepreneur, and everything for me has been a grind. I mean, from the day one, it still is a struggle. Struggle epitomizes what I've been doing. And maybe it's because of my own inadequacies or lack of information, lack of knowledge. But what I do have to offset that is a determination and a drive and persistence. And so those things keep me going. But, I got the EIDL, and then I got notification that they had additional funds for a second round, but there were some paperwork things I needed to do that I didn't get done and couldn't get done in time. So I lost out on probably an additional 150 or 75,000 of low interest loan working capital. And so why am I saying this? I'm saying this so that our listeners know that opportunities are there, but we need to connect with the kinds of resources that can make sure our houses are in order and that we can take advantage of things that are due us. And that's why what you're doing at HBCI is so critical. And what my role is, Brother Silas, as I said, to make sure that every Black business in Twin Cities and through my network, Black businesses in Georgia and Michigan are aware that they can use a resource like you or others to make sure that they have not left money on the table. That's how critical this is, and it's important, and it's real. It's right now. So let me do this. Take a minute, and let's put your information, let people know how to reach you at HBCI. We can also put it on the scroll, perhaps, but just tell it, first of all, Silas Huston, how do they contact you, by telephone or by email?
They can contact me by telephone. My number is 612-251-4602.
Say it again.
612-251-4602.
Great.
And then my email is Silas H, for my last initial, at hbconsultancy.com.
Great. Thank you. Maybe we can put it in the chat or in the chart somewhere before the program's over. Let me switch gears. But first, I'm Adam McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Adam McFarlane, talking with my guests and my friend Silas Huston at HBCI. And we're talking about just now the earned credit, earned retention credit. It's an important thing. But Silas, today, August 1, is a monumentally big day in Minnesota. Minnesota now joins some number of states around the country that have legalized the use of recreational marijuana. And you and I met a little while back ago. I've also had conversations with Bill English and others who are studying and looking at how do we both articulate and reflect and ensure the interests of the Black community are both identified and pursued and served in this groundbreaking legislation that takes what had been an albatross, particularly around the neck of Black people. How do we turn that inside out, upside down, and figure out the benefit? And the benefit is not just in consumption. The benefit is in the business of marijuana. So let's have you. I know you've been studying the law, what it means, and as you assess where we are today, how would you describe what the legislation is doing as of today?
Well, it's like it's legal now, so happy legalization to everybody out there. I think that when we look at this, one of the things that struck me first and foremost was when a bill like this comes into play, it changes the lives of everybody within the state. And when we look at the melanated community, we really, when these things happen, we really need to be of a mindset of, okay, what does it mean for us? How is it going to affect us? I mean, there's the whole legal side of it. There's still going to be some legalization. There's the expungement of what's happening out there. There's the licensing part of it. There's the home use. There's the growing of it. I mean, there's so many different things that we really need to understand. One of the things to really understand is that this bill puts some provisions in there to right some of the wrongs that had happened within our community. So if you're somebody who was convicted of a marijuana charge, you get preference in license. If you're a family member of someone who was convicted of a marijuana charge, you get preference in license. If you live in any of the number of identified communities where heavy marijuana policing took place, these are pre-identified, not to be determined. You can go and see where they're at. There are communities. Then you also can get a preference in these licenses. But these licenses are going to be varied. They're going to be detailed. They're going to require a whole lot of information. And so what HBCI is looking to do is to first understand the bill as it's first presented, be able to break it down and bring it to our community and have people understand all the different ways that this affects us, all the benefits there, the risks there, the change in things such as how does it work for your employment if they've been drug testing, how would that work? How does it work if they, smoking or not smoking in your apartment? I mean, there's so many different things that we need to understand. But there's a number of ancillary businesses that's going to be created that will not require a license that will be critical to the operation of this business. Everything from packaging of products to label making to all sorts of things that don't require a license, but do require some understanding, some forework, some preparation. And so we see a lot of opportunity so long as we're prepared, because the bill also calls for a certain number of licenses, right? One license for every 12,500 residents per county, not per city. So if you live in a county that reaches its limit, but one city doesn't have any, that city will no longer be required to have it. But until that happens, they literally are going to pop up everywhere. And the question is going to be, where's the best place to have yours?
So the question is, how many licenses does that mean? I had talked to a couple of guests a few days ago, and the number of 25 licenses came up. And I had the impression they meant 25 for the whole state, which is not very many. That's totally not correct, right?
That's totally not correct. That's totally not correct. So you start off with the fact that when people
maybe they meant 25 licenses in Minneapolis alone.
I don't right. There's got to be one for every 12,500. Right?
So how many people in Minneapolis? 300,000.
300,000, right? So that's
a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean,
a lot.
That's
Okay.
a lot, right? And so. But then you got to think, when people are thinking about these licenses, they're only thinking about dispensaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a license for growers. There's going to be a license for manufacturers. There's going to be a license for people to distribute it. There's going to be a license for people where they can have a multi-site on-site. You can grow it, manufacture it, and somebody can come and buy it from you. Going to be a place where you can grow it and manufacture it, and people can come there and smoke it there, right? And play music. And so it depends on. Then you have conference. You can get a conference license where you can hold a conference and have people come and buy and sell it so many times per year. So with so many different types of licenses that there's going to be tons of them in all different areas. So 20. I don't know where somebody got 25 from. That there's. Yeah, any formula you look at will be way more than 25.
What are the dangers? Two questions. As you do your examination of the impact of the law and the new opportunities associated with it, what does your informal research of the Black community tell you? Here's the reason I'm asking the question. We've got this strong historical kind of church-based attitude about alcohol and tobacco, which can extend to certain kinds of music, which can extend at an extreme to makeup and the kind of clothes you wear. I mean, there are gradations, right?
Yes.
So there's an extreme ultra-conservative core inside our culture that we know exists, and we have to recognize that views everything as a threat to the moral positioning of the individual and of society. But then there's the spectrum of people that are libertarian or liberal or progressive or moderate. And they have different awarenesses and understandings. How do you see the debate in our community? Are you hearing much at all about whether or not, or how to do that? How does it compare to us talking about alcohol, for example?
Yeah, what I find is, first and foremost, there's a lot of closeted marijuana users. People have been using it for years, but didn't want anybody to know because of that, all of those things that you just said. And then there's a number of people who, since this has come up, have started to think, maybe I might want to try it. I got anxiety, I got back problems, I have a hard time sleeping, I have all these different things that we know that it's helpful for. And then you have those who, I always thought weed heads were a certain type. And now I got to get over that. I don't know how that's going to work, right? And it's not strictly an age thing, but you find that the older folks in our community are having a harder time with, now you can just blaze up right there and nobody can call you derelict and you doing it. And so we got to work our way through that part so that we don't end up discouraging ourselves from getting into these opportunities out of some moral dilemma. I mean, there are people who own bars but don't drink, right? And so you need to think about it from that perspective. Separate the business opportunity from your moral thoughts about it, and whether you would take it or not has nothing to do with whether or not there's good business opportunities here. And that's the way we try it. And that's why we're looking to take the lead in somewhat to bring information to the community about this whole thing, having us have a conversation amongst ourselves about what this means and how we go about it. So we're looking to bring in experts in different areas, legal experts, growing experts, all the different areas. They've been doing it in several places around the country. So we're going to be tapping into some of that know-how of how this thing is going to progress. We're in contact with the Office of Cannabis Management. They don't have a director yet. They're working through that process, but they're putting together a committee. We're looking to be on that committee, but we're looking to follow that process as these policies come. We're going to be in the forefront of bringing that information to the community so that you don't have to wait until they publish it. We'll be ready when it comes so that we can be at the front of the line, ready to meet those requirements.
Are there estimates or guesstimates presently on the financial impact possible from the COVID industry here in Minnesota for the Black community in particular? Do you know?
They don't break it down to the Black community, but they estimate within the first 3 years to do 1.7 billion, annually, and then to see that within 5 years grow to 2.5 billion annually. When you look at other states of similar size, those numbers make sense. It's going to be interesting with some of the things that Minnesota is doing, such as you can have up to 2 pounds at home. That's way more than any other state has done. So that I don't know how that might affect the total purchases that people make. You can have 3 ounces on you, which is also high. And so there's a desire to see Minnesota supply its own marijuana and not see it come from other states. So that could push our revenue numbers up as they count what money's made here. And so we'll see, but it's certainly in the billions.
Okay. And then I think people are always concerned about children, young people. I've been hearing radio shows. What are you hearing about how we protect families and children, in particular young people? Because I think part of this obligation is to let everyone know that the law makes use of, possession of, selling to people under 21 illegal.
Yes, it's still a felony.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you can't. So they have rules as to how close to a school you can have a dispensary, those types of things. You're not allowed not allowed to consume in any open in any public space where children are present and playing. And so there's some rules that we need to understand, that you're just not going to be free to just smoke it wherever, to understand those nuances of when and where and how children play into it. The sale to children is the one area where the bill gets very strident. The rules are going to be tougher than they were and just selling in general before. And it makes sense because they're making it legal for the adults. And so selling it to a children should have a harsher penalty, and the bill calls for that.
Silas, listen, brother, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, reminding people that ERC is available to us, and now reminding people that we need to figure out, pay attention, do the reading, go to the town hall meetings, do the research on the impact of the legalization of recreational marijuana, what it means for Minnesota in general and our people in particular. Silas, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And before I close, I want to remind you all that we're partnering with the Minnesota Department of Health to invite our community to know that risk still exists around COVID-19. And in reminding you, we want to encourage you and all of us to follow the COVID-19 protocols. Simple things like washing your hands, like staying aware, like prioritizing prevention. And the idea is simple, that together we can create awareness, we can encourage testing, and help everyone stay healthy. We want you to get well, be well, and stay healthy. With that, thank you for being here today. Again, support, like, share, and be a part of this program. I'm Adam McFarlane. We'll see you next time.